Before the story begins, please note that it explores meaningful themes of family, humanity, and personal responsibility. This content is intended to encourage thoughtful reflection. If you feel unprepared for these themes, you may wish to pause before continuing. The rain pounded relentlessly against the large windows of the upscale Oakwood Grill restaurant, blurring the city. Lights, as if they were watercolor tears on a gray canvas. Inside, the atmosphere was warm, vibrant, and cruelly exclusive. Barbara, an 80-year-old woman whose elegance couldn't quite hide the fragility of her posture, stood before the maitre d's podium. She wore her best navy blue velvet dress, a pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother, and a handbag that trembled imperceptibly between her gloved fingers. She had rehearsed this moment all week, walking in with her head held high, asking for a table for one, and celebrating that, against all odds, she had reached 8 decades of life. However, reality was proving to be much harsher than her imagination. The young man in charge of reservations wouldn't even look her in the eye. He checked his tablet with a mechanical disdain, ignoring the silent plea of an old woman who just didn't want to dine alone on her most important night. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but without a reservation, it's impossible to seat you tonight. We are fully booked," employee repeated for the 3rd time. He said it with that tone of voice young people use when they think an elderly person doesn't understand the rules of the modern world. Barbara felt the heat rise to her cheeks, not from the cold of the street, but from the stinging shame of feeling invisible, a nuisance amidst everyone else's joy. She looked around the room, couples toasting, groups of friends laughing, families celebrating. Everyone seemed to have a place in the world, and assigned space where they were welcome and loved. She, on the other hand, with her immense fortune, accumulated after years of running a manufacturing empire with an iron fist, couldn't buy the one thing she really needed that night: company and a little bit of dignity. Loneliness, she thought bitterly. It's the only price money can't negotiate when time runs out. Barbara nodded slowly, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. She wasn't going to make a scene. Her old money upbringing and her pride wouldn't allow it. "I understand, young man. Thanks anyway," she murmured with a broken voice, turning on her heels to face the revolving door and the rainy night waiting for her again. She felt ridiculous. Who was she trying to fool? She had pushed everyone in her life away with her demands and coldness, prioritizing success over affection. And now, destiny was handing her the bill in a crowded restaurant. As she took the first step toward the exit, feeling her legs weigh like lead, a crystalline, childish laugh cut through the murmur of the place. It was a pure sound, full of life, that made her stop by inertia, as if seeking one last trace of human warmth before returning to her empty, silent penthouse overlooking Central Park. A few meters from the entrance, at a round table near the window, were a young man and a little girl. He, whom we'll call Daniel, must have been in his mid-30s. He wasn't dressed with the opulence of the other diners. He wore a simple corduroy jacket and a white shirt without a tie, but his face radiated a quiet kindness. Little Lucy, about 7 years old, had messy hair and big, curious eyes that sparkled with intelligence. Both of them had stopped eating. Daniel held his fork in midair, but his attention was glued to the entrance, watching the heartbreaking scene of Barbara being turned away. There was no mockery in his gaze, nor indifference. There was a deep recognition, an empathy, that only those who have known pain firsthand possess. Daniel put down his fork, wiped his mouth with his napkin, and looked at his daughter, who nodded with a seriousness beyond her years. Barbara already had her hand resting on the cold metal of the door when she felt someone watching her. It is that sixth sense you never lose, the feeling of being the center of someone's attention. She turned slightly, expecting to see the maitre d' watching to make sure she left quickly so as not to make the entrance look bad. But it wasn't him. Her tired eyes met Daniel's warm gaze. The man raised his right hand and gave her a clear, slow, and respectful signal. It wasn't a goodbye gesture or a casual wave. He was beckoning her to come over. Barbara frowned in confusion. Did she know him? Impossible. She had been a recluse for years, retired from public life. He was making fun of her. The paranoia of old age. That voice that tells you everyone looks at you with Pity began whispering to her to run, not to expose herself to more humiliation. However, Daniel insisted. He stood up, which in itself was an act of chivalry, almost extinct, and walked a few steps toward her, dodging a waiter with a tray full of glasses. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, in a smooth baritone voice that calmed Barbara's nerves a little. "My daughter and I couldn't help but hear and see what happened. This table is for 4, and there are only 2 of us. It would be an honor for us if you joined us for dinner. It is raining too hard outside for you to leave without a bite to eat." Barbara froze. The offer was so unexpected, so genuinely kind, that her brain took a few seconds to process it. She looked at the man, searching for some sign of a trick, some hidden camera, something, to justify such generosity in such a selfish world. But she only saw sincerity and dark eyes that felt strangely familiar. I wouldn't want to be a bother, young man," Barbara stammered, clutching her purse like a shield. "It is a family dinner. I don't want to be an intruder. Besides, today is... well, never mind." She stopped herself before confessing it was her birthday. She didn't want pity. Daniel smiled, and that smile lit up his tired face. "Precisely because it is a family dinner. We are missing a grandma at the table," he joked gently, lightening the mood. "Lucy, my daughter, says you look like a fairy tale queen with that necklace, and you don't leave a queen standing at the entrance. Please join us. The food here is delicious, but the portions are huge, and we need help." The mention of the little. The girl softened the steel armor Barbara had built around her heart for decades. She looked toward the table and saw little Lucy waving at her with her small hand, flashing a radiant, toothless smile. Barbara felt her eyes misting, up and blinked rapidly to stop a tear. A tear would ruin her flawless makeup. It had been years, perhaps decades, since anyone had made her feel needed, even if it was just to help finish a plate of food. She took a hesitant step toward them, and then another. The maitre d', observing the scene with disbelief from his podium, opened his mouth to protest, probably to say that sharing a table with strangers is not allowed, but a withering glare from Daniel silenced him. Daniel offered his arm to Barbara, just as a gentleman from another era would have done. As she took it, Barbara noticed the sleeve of his jacket was worn at the elbow, a detail that showed that this man worked hard for every penny, which made his invitation even more valuable. He didn't have money to spare, but he had heart to spare. "Hey, let's take a quick pause